Hello, everybody. Welcome into our pre-show here at Computer America, and it is a Thursday afternoon. Hopefully, all of you are having an enjoyable day. Ben and I have a nice little treat for you. We're going to be talking to Gary.
1 minute until showtime.
To Gary Kaye. He is the founder and operator and owner and chief content officer and chief cook and bottle washer for Tech50 Plus magazine, online magazine, tech50plus.com, and we're going to be talking about some of the new things that he's observed, and he's going to be with us here for both hours of the show, so stand by. And we're also going to be talking about a new little segment he's going to be doing for Computer America. We'll tell you about that as well when we begin the show. And, of course, tomorrow we have our social media winner of the week, where we're giving away that Logitech M535 Bluetooth wireless mouse. So sit back, relax, as Ben and I and Gary begin 2 hours of the Computer America show, 15 seconds from now. Okay, make it 10 seconds.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live, it's America's longest-running national radio talk show on computers, Computer America, hosted by national columnist Craig Crossman. Look for Craig's weekly column in your favorite newspaper. This show is being beamed nationwide at ComputerAmerica.com. Keep it here for technology news, computer products, guest interviews, and your phone calls. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America show. It's the nation's longest-running, nationally syndicated radio talk show about computers and technology. Computer America is heard around the world and coast to coast. And I'm your host, Craig Crossman.
And I'm your co-host, Ben.
And welcome into a Thursday edition of the Computer America program here on the show. Terrific program lined up for you. Depending upon where you are, if you're in the southeast portion of the country, what do we got? We have a hurricane or something, sort of, or a tropical depression?
You know, I'm not in the southeast anymore, so my interest in hurricanes has decreased dramatically. But I have been hearing from some people down there that, indeed, there is a hurricane, I believe, heading for South Florida.
Well, they're not sure yet. That's the whole thing. And one of them is definitely not. I actually have is it NOAA? The website for NOAA that's actually keeping track of it, activity of all the tropical. Gaston is the one that's not heading toward the United States. It's going to be out in the and then there is this disturbance that still hasn't had a name yet. That's in the process of forming. Again, this is
right.
The National Hurricane Center website. So,
and it's kind of fun because you go on the Weather Channel or you go on wherever you happen to get your weather modeling predictions, and after about a week of kind of a week in advance, it's all kind of voodoo and guessing and witchcraft. Like there's no real science to what happens beyond 5 days to a week. But up until but 0 days to 5 days in advance, we talk about supercomputers all the time, and how China has a new one out, and the U.S. Keeps trying to build better ones and better ones. All those weather modeling forecasts that you see are generated by supercomputers that we talk about here on the show all the time. So, cool to see a real-world application for when we say, oh wow, that has 34 petaflops per second.
Pedophiles per second.
No, petaflops. But but whatever the units of processing power is, we say, wow, look how powerful this is. But now you get to see it in action of what it really is.
Yeah, it is, and it's very impressive. Anyhow, as I said, welcome into the show, and we've got a really terrific 2 hours planned for you. In both hours, we are treated by our correspondent, Gary Kaye, who is the founder and chief content officer of Tech50 Plus, is here for both hours of the show. And yeah, exactly. And he's got some interesting things to talk about, and we have a little announcement that Gary's going to be further participating on the program. if you have a comment or question, we'd certainly love to hear from you. 347-884-8881. That's 347-884-8881. We'll get you on and get you through. Or you can head over to any page at computeramerica.com if you're radio shy, you don't want to go on the air. Just go to any page there in the menu bar. You'll see it says Home, Live Stream, there. Go down to one that says Submit a Question. Click on that. You'll go to our question submission page. You can type in anything you like, hit the Submit button, and Ben and I will see what you've typed instantaneously. The other thing that we also welcome you to do is watch our live video stream. We are a radio talk show, but we also have live video streaming available. Again, any page at computeramerica.com. The second option on the menu bar says Live Stream. Click it. You'll instantly be transported to our live video streaming page. You'll join the show already in progress, and then you can go ahead and watch the show as well as listen to the program. And Ben, you can see Gary, you can see Ben. Ben actually has the technology to display in the background websites, links, videos, that type of thing. So whatever we're talking about, you can also see it as well as listen to it on the show. Of course, we also welcome you to go to the Tech50 Plus website, tech50plus.com, and a lot of the stories we'll be talking about will be represented there as well. But of course, the easiest thing, again, is go to computeramerica.com. That truly is the internet home of a radio broadcast, and you can see everything there that we do on our show at computeramerica.com. Okay, so anything else that you may want to mention to our listeners, Ben, before we get Gary on the show here?
Anything else to the listeners? No. I think they know what they need to know. Of course, computeramerica.com. Check for all of our past shows. Be sure to find us out in the wild. Even go to all of our different networks. Tune in and what have you. Also go to places like Stitcher. Find us in the wild because that helps us as well. And it's Thursday, one day away from Friday, and folks, it's almost over. You're almost there.
Almost. All right. Well, as I mentioned, Tech50 Plus is an online magazine with the motto, Technology with a Boomer Perspective. I like that. It's written by Gary Kaye, an award-winning journalist who has been covering tech since 1981. And after a career with major networks, he now writes about tech for the 50-plus market. He is Tech50 Plus's founder and chief content officer. And Gary, of course, is now one of our Computer America's stable of technology correspondents who appears here on a regular basis on every month. And Gary brings his insights into how people 50 and over are embracing and how they're using computers and technology. Gary, welcome into Computer America. How are you?
Always nice to be here. See, Ben, you got to be careful because when you turn around and say to somebody who's 68 years old, it's almost over, it really has a very different kind of connotation.
Well, thanks to modern technology, I think 68 is far from almost over.
Well, I hope you're right. Listening to you guys talk about the hurricanes, I thought all of the ill winds were taking place out on the campaign trail.
Oh, yeah, they are. There's a lot of hot air going on over that, but that, of course, is a different topic. We try not to get embroiled into politics. We are a family talk show, and so
it's too easy. It's too easy. Low-hanging fruit.
It is easy. However, one of the things I want to mention to our listeners, one of our producers came up with this excellent idea, and of course we have our News Tips Bulletin Review from Marty Winston, and we air that every day, Monday through Friday. Actually, we do two of them. And we are constantly looking to diversify and expand the things to our listeners and give them additional content. And it was suggested that Gary do a 60-second review of a product or of a service or just of a concept or whatever he would like to do. We would give him complete editorial content license over what he would like to do, and we would entitle this "The Senior Moment." Which I thought was really kind of clever. It's a little play on words. And so starting, I think, next week, we're going to get them, start doing it, and Gary's going to get them to us, and we'll get them fully produced with music and everything. We're still looking for an appropriate music track, but one will come to us. I am quite confident of that. And then we'll have a News Tips Bulletin Review from Marty Winston, and then also going to have a senior moment with Gary. To to talk Gary Kaye to do this. So that all begins starting on Monday. Hopefully everything goes well, and that should be a lot of fun. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing how it develops, Gary. I think that it's
I'm looking forward to it as well. I'm only hoping I can remember what I was supposed to write about in my senior moment. Where's the rim shot now that I need it?
Yeah, the puns will continue on. Exactly.
There you go.
All right. Thanks. If we can't have fun with it, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We don't want to dry and you know, we want it fun. We want you to have fun with it, and you know, and humor goes a long way when on this show. So a little humor, a little play on words, you know, that's the fun. And of course, you're very experienced in doing this. You've been with the media and doing things like this for a long time, and so we expect high
for longer than Ben has been.
That's right.
That does seem to be our metric here on the show, you know, for a variety of guests. Is, you know, in relation to Ben's existence, how long have you been using computers, programming with the company, blah blah blah. So, you know, Ben's age is the metric.
Yes, Ben's existence is surely the metric of this. He makes a good point.
So where do you guys want to start?
Well, since I know next month you're going to be you're at this this convention having to do with electronic bikes. I think it's called e-bike.
No, it's called Interbike, and it's actually for the whole biking industry. It's really geared towards bike dealers across the U.S., and it's a showcase of all of the latest bikes. But now they're starting to pay particular attention to the new e-bikes that are starting to play a significant role in the biking business.
Well, you know, I think is it all part of the times that we're living in here? You know, we're starting to see more autonomous driving vehicles now. That's the new hot buzzword is self-driving cars, and I think the new hot buzzword for bicycles is you know, self-powered bikes, or power-assisted bikes. So you don't have to constantly lean on the pedals to get from one place to another, and they're becoming lighter and smaller and you know, they don't look like motorbikes where they slap the handlebars and something. They look like actual bicycles, and you have to kind of look at them in many ways. You have to look at them closely to understand that there's some sort of power assist going on there. Some incorporate the power assist very cleverly into the bicycle. You don't even see it.
Well, the spread of e-bikes is really developing from the confluence of two major trends. The first is bicycle commuting. We're seeing that really taking hold in Asian countries and in Europe, where the price of cars and the price of gasoline is extremely high, and bicycle commuting is a reasonable and cost-effective alternative to doing it by car. And then here in the U.S. And elsewhere as well, we're seeing the development of e-bikes as a way for older folks who enjoy biking but don't enjoy fighting the hills to stay in shape. The New York Times very recently did an article in their wellness blog citing an academic study that was done proving that there are very and quantifiable health effects from riding e-bikes. And it actually gets pretty interesting because there's a lot of controversy. You know, people say, well, you know, why would you want to ride an electric assist bike? It's cheating, isn't it? And there's a big thing about cheating with an e-bike. And that whole notion makes me crazy because it's not cheating. Who are you cheating? It's not like you're doing, you know, it's not like you're doing the Tour de France and you've stuck a motor on it. Although that's actually called bike doping.
Right.
And there have been cases of it. But assuming you're not trying to cheat in a competition, this is just, it's fun. It certainly helps you if you're a bike commuter and you want to get to work without being all sweated up. But you're not cheating anybody. And I would make the case, and have made the case, that being an e-bike rider is actually every bit as healthy, and in some cases healthier, than just, slogging it out on the old-fashioned kind of bike. Very simple. If you can ride further and have a lot more fun and spend more time outside on an e-bike than you can on a standard bike, because you're not fighting it as much. So, am I cheating? Well, if I'm out on my e-bike, I'll do about 20 miles, and I'll be out for a couple of hours, and I'll have a lovely time in the country. If I'm riding a standard bike, the chances are I'll be tuckered out, exhausted after about 5, 7, 8 miles.
Huh.
So the added oomph from the e-bike in terms of the time that I'm exercising, and also the sort of non-quantifiable enjoyment, because I go out in the woods, I go out on bike trails away from traffic, quiet dirt roads. The mental, the emotional fun that comes from that, can't be ranked as cheating.
Well, I mean, look, let's face it. I think one of the underlying, well, first of all, I think one of the underlying things here with the bicycles is that it allows people to be more mobile. I'm not saying going hundreds of miles like in a car, but just local. If you want to go to the supermarket, if you want to go to the park, or if you want to just sometimes taking a car to go to the park, is kind of a
seems silly.
Seems very silly. And again, you mentioned Asian countries. I mean, China's been riding bicycles. Its population, as long as I can remember. I mean, the '60s. I remember seeing, they were all bikes. That you're hard pressed to find a car.
China did name the bicycle as the #1 invention that kind of created the country. I mean, it really is, for a lot of people outside the U.S., is their #1 mode of transport.
Right. And I think it continues to be, although it's still, of course, it's economic.
And, honestly, I feel like it would be a bigger deal here in the U.S., but I'm not sure if a lot of people grasp how subsidized our gas industry is, and just how cheap our gas is compared to what the actual market value is. Because, overseas you're paying $6-7 a liter for a liter of gasoline. And over here, you're paying, two? I haven't looked at the gas station lately. Like $2.50, $3 for a gallon.
It's like $1.95.
Well, it's not only the gas, but in many countries, the value of the automobile itself is jacked up by 2x because of taxes and tariffs and the like. So, for example, in Israel, a car that you would buy in the U.S. for about $15,000 would be $30,000 over there. Wow. So the calculus in terms of a motorized bike versus the pouring gasoline into an unbelievably expensive car really becomes pretty simple. There have been other impediments to the spread of e-bikes here in the United States, one of which has been regulatory. We do not have a uniform system of laws regulating what's legal and what's illegal. For many years, e-bikes were illegal in a lot of states, and in fact they still are. So just this year, early this year, California made e-bikes legal. New York State still has not. It is illegal to operate an e-bike in the state of New York. Even though there are thousands of people who still do it, nobody's going to, I can't see any officer going to the trouble of tagging you, unless you're a Chinese delivery guy running the wrong way on a one-way street in Manhattan, which happens all the time. I mean, they've got a crackdown there, but for recreational or commuters, nobody's going to bother dealing with it. But for some people and some dealers, the regulatory issue becomes one that is an impediment to selling the bikes. Interestingly enough, pardon me because I'm going to spout off here a little bit, the federal government says they are perfectly legal. The Consumer Product Safety Commission actually has a set of rules regulating e-bikes, and it was the result of a House measure. It was called House Resolution 727, passed a number of years ago. It's in the Consumer Product Safety rules, and it basically says that if you have a bike that still has pedals and you have to use the pedals, and you cannot use it to go over 20 miles an hour on the flats. In other words, so downhill doesn't count, but if you're on the flats and that thing won't go over 20, that's legal. But having it qualified as legal for the Consumer Product Safety Commission is not the same as having rules in a locality, a municipality, or a state or a province regulating what you can put on the road, what needs license plates, what needs registration, insurance, and so on.
Why would it mean that? Why would it mean, to have a set of regulations that you have to abide by, and then say, well, on the local level they could say 15 instead of 20, and what is federal level legal is not state level legal, I guess.
Well, this issue, Ben, not only is interesting and relevant when it comes to e-bikes, because traditionally the states regulate the roads, and the states issue driver's licenses, and the states set speed limits. But the issue of this question of states versus federal regulation when it comes to transportation not only takes on meaning in the area of e-bikes, but we touched on this a few weeks ago. It also gets right into the heart of the self-driving car, because you now have states that have regulations on self-driving cars that are at odds with one another. You have to have somebody behind the wheel of a self-driving car. Some places you do, some places you don't. You have to have a steering wheel.
Is the solution the federal one, just to kick it out of the state's hands, or is it? I mean, when you get into these large super categories, something that's, I'm not talking about, let's put a tax on liquor or something. We're talking about something that really affects everybody, no matter where they are in the United States. Do we need a blanket federal law to kind of cover a category such as this with automatic autonomous driving vehicles and the rules of the road?
Well, I would argue in favor of that, Craig, simply because, from a logical perspective, it makes sense not to have 50 different sets of rules.
Exactly.
All right. But from a practical matter, in our federal government, those rights that are not specifically granted to the federal government under our Constitution are reserved to the states.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So we get into this argument not only in questions of regulating what's on the roads, but we get into it in education. Who regulates the schools? And you've got a U.S. Department of Education, which is only limited, in its ability to throw money at an issue, but it can't really regulate what's going on in the schools. Now, there are places where we have resolved this in favor of the federal government. So, for example, the Interstate Commerce Commission basically sets rules that have to do with trucking that go from state to state to state. So there the federal mandate does exist. And there are other areas, certainly in communications, where the federal government says these are the rules and these are nationwide, and it would be impractical for this to be regulated on a state-by-state basis. And I would make the argument, as you are, Craig, that it only makes sense to do things like self-driving cars on a national basis. Imagine, if you will, and again, this is something we touched on a couple of weeks ago, imagine if we get a system that is comparable to what goes on with transponders on aircraft, only it's for driving. and you had 50 different sets of regulations as to how cars would talk to each other or how highways would regulate the motions of cars in 50 different states. Impossible.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Or you cross a state line and all of a sudden you find out what you're driving is no longer legal.
Well, that's correct,
Yeah.
and that's actually the way things are right now.
Not good.
And of course, one would hope common sense is going to reign, and exactly.
I'm sorry, I must have.
We had to have the group laugh for that.
I must have.
There you go. One would hope common sense would reign. And again, you seem to be really into e-bikes and interbike. Have there been any mentions about, like, what would be the incentive to, kind of be a little bit more lax on e-bikes? Does it show any kind of, taking traffic off the road? Does it show any kind of increased productivity by its citizens? I mean, are there any studies?
In point of fact, these were the biking industry has a very, very active lobbying group that has been spending time with right now. The last time I looked, and my numbers may be off because it's been a few months since I've looked at it, but the last time I looked, about 26 out of 50 states said e-bikes were legal, and the remaining states had various degrees of restrictions, in some cases outright bans. And the biking industry has lobbying groups in every one of those states, or almost every one of those states, trying to change the regulation. And the arguments are very simple, and yes, you're already making some of them. It basically gets motors, gasoline generating motors off the road, and it has positive health improvements, reduces traffic, does all sorts of wonderful things, and there are very few downsides. As I said, the only place we've really seen a downside has been in Midtown New York, where the delivery guys are all riding around on illegal e-bikes and clogging streets and going on sidewalks and knocking down ladies with baby carriages. And there've been a number of instances, but those are so minor, and yet. There are cases not only in the United States but in Canada where people are going, no, we don't think an e-bike should be on a bike trail, because we think it should just be for plain old bikes. Frankly, I think that discriminates against not only e-bike users, but because older folks are more inclined to use them, at least the folks who aren't commuting, it actually becomes an ageist issue as well.
I've been on a few biking paths, and I never use them as biking paths per se. I use them whenever I walk my dogs because they were a little bit more off the beaten path, and you could dogs just love smells and nature. So I was like, yeah, that's what I want. Mm-hmm. People on biking paths, not the friendliest of people. They will yell at you and almost hit you until you get out of their way. And I get where they're coming from. But, like, if you're on a bike path, you don't want that. Like, I kind of see it from a point of view of this is our bike path, and if we open up to e-bikes, there's going to be a lot more people ruining our experiences, which I don't agree with, but I think that's where they're coming from. Like, they see it as kind of opening the floodgate to a bunch of people who are not really trained on bike paths to all of a sudden flood the bike paths. Like, and again, I don't agree with it. I just think that's where they're, coming from.
Well, here's the argument I would make. Right now, I go out. I'm out on the bike trails on these rail trails almost every single weekend. And in many cases, there are speed restrictions on them of 10 or 15 or 18 miles an hour. Remember that legally, these bikes are capped at 20 miles an hour on the flats. It is not unusual. I'll keep a cadence on a flat path of about 9 to 13 miles an hour. And it's not the least bit unusual for some guy, on a road bike a two-wheeler, to go whizzing past me at double my speed.
Oh yeah.
So I would make the case that it's not a speed issue. I would make the case that it's a matter of courtesy. It's a matter of rules of the road. In the United States, the general tendency is to travel to the right and pass to the left, and that's basically the rule of thumb on a bike path. People are encouraged to go single file, but the other thing is that every bike path that I've encountered, people are encouraged either by habit or even by signage to announce themselves when they're passing. So so you don't catch people with dogs by surprise.
Yeah.
And that's what I see routinely is people coming by me who are passing me will go, passing on your left.
Yeah.
Or they'll ring their bell.
Right.
Now,
so wait. So what you're saying is there's no HOV lanes on a bicycle pass. All right, well, we're at the bottom of the hour. We're going to take a break here. You're listening to the Computer America Show. Gary Kaye is here. He's Tech50 Plus's founder and chief content officer. We're talking about e-bikes right now. We got a news tips bulletin review from Marty Winston coming up as well. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Sometimes disaster strikes. Data can be lost due to many different reasons. Accidental reformatting, power spikes, virus attacks. Zero Assumption Recovery provides a suite of highly effective and thorough data recovery software for Windows operating systems. ZA is suitable for home users and small businesses who need a powerful data recovery solution for Windows and Linux file systems.
Go to z-a-recovery.com.
Sometimes disaster strikes. Data can be lost due to many different reasons. Accidental reformatting, power spikes, virus attacks. Zero Assumption Recovery provides a suite of highly effective and thorough data recovery software for Windows operating systems. ZA is suitable for home users and small businesses who need a powerful data recovery solution for Windows and Linux file systems.
Go to z-a-recovery.com.
Hi, this is Craig Crossman, host of the Computer America Show. You have important meetings to schedule. Your company's getting ready for its IPO, and you're in charge of the PTA fundraiser this month. So how do you coordinate everyone to be available at the same time? Are you still using emails, phone calls, even text messages to schedule meetings with a group of people? How's that working out for you? Not so great, huh? It's a fact that every day, millions of people suffer from scheduling headaches. Well, with Doodle, scheduling meetings with a group of people is quick and easy. With Doodle, you can easily propose available times to each member. Each one checks off the times that they're available, and then you simply pick the time that works best for the group, all in an easy-to-read display that integrates with your existing calendar. Nothing could be more simple. Give Doodle a try for free, and like millions of Doodle users, you'll truly see how easy it is to find the perfect date and time for all your meetings. That's www.doodle.com.
Sorry, gender-neutral connectors just can't be AC/DC. Marty Winston with a News Tips Bulletin Review for Computer America. This time the Intermatic Dual-Tech Motion Sensor. It looks a little like a smoke alarm, but it really houses a PIR, that's passive infrared motion sensor, that can cover 1,600 square feet, plus an ultrasonic motion sensor that can cover 1,000 square feet, plus an ambient light sensor, and you have ways to adjust the sensitivity of all three. It's made for wiring into AC power and selectively powering a load like a light or a motor when either or both you choose of the motion sensor's triggers and when the ambient light level you set is appropriate. You can also set between 5 seconds and half an hour how long the load remains powered when it triggers. So bottom line, the Intermatic Dual-Tech Motion Sensor can bring automation to any room, battery-free. Marty Winston, News Tips Bulletin for Computer America.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. Thank you, Marty Winston, for that News Tips Bulletin review. And hopefully, Marty does seem like a very nice guy. Hopefully, he can share the limelight. Now with our current correspondent who is actually going to be here with us for both hours, Mr. Gary Kaye. And yeah, he is he's with Tech50 Plus, founder and chief content officer. And yeah, we are talking all about e-bikes right now. And of course, I've noticed a trend whenever Gary's on that, some of the more interesting conversations we have are definitely involved around not just the topic, but the implications of said topic and the implications of e-bikes. I believe just before the break we were talking about how, of course, if you legalize e-bikes in every sense, where, in every sense, that makes sense. Like, you don't want to put, I don't know, an F1 engine on a bike and call it an e-bike, or like a Tesla battery system on an e-bike and say, yeah, this thing can go 130 miles an hour, but hey, e-bike. Like, anything within reason. That opens the floodgates to a lot more people using them. And of course, if people are going to use bikes, that means a lot more people using the bike infrastructure that we have here in the U.S. And, being honest, not a lot of towns or not a lot of cities across the country have beefed up their bicycle infrastructure. Bike lanes are still a rarity in a lot of places. Bike paths are still very, very limited.
It's interesting because where you live right now, you're in the Carolinas, and I know when we get to our home, there's a bike path. There's actually a sidewalk, and there's a bike path, and then like about a quarter way, it just ends. It just stops.
Right, very underdeveloped bike system.
Yeah, exactly, and you would like to think that there would be more of them, but they aren't. Most people are riding bikes. They're on the road, or they're with the other vehicles. It's not the safest thing in the world, especially at nighttime, I would think.
So a couple of points. Ben, before we leave the topic, you were talking about being out on the bike path with your dog and people screaming to get out of the way. Courtesy goes a tremendous way to actually making your time on the trails more enjoyable, but also in terms of safety. And I see a couple of things on a regular basis. One is kids, little kids, who don't understand about staying to the right. And, bikers really need to be careful as they're approaching kids, because you never know how they're going to behave. Folks with dogs, most of the dog owners that I've encountered on the trails, especially if you give them a little shout saying, "Hey, passing on your left," they'll tighten up on the leash, and the dogs are not going to go out and run in front of you. On the other hand, I have seen instances and have experienced instances where there are large groups of folks taking up the entire width of a trail. So I was out, in fact, last week, and there were two groups of dog owners walking about 8 dogs from different directions, and they stopped and had a convention in the middle of the bike path, and basically took over the entire path. And as I'm coming down a hill towards them, I yell out, "Passing." And one guy in the group turns around to the other folks and goes, "Bike coming," and they ignored him. They did nothing. They just stood there blocking the entire trail. And finally, it was either I was going to have to slam on my brakes or slam into them, and I screamed. I said, "Bike, pick a side," a lot louder than that. And then they went, "Oh, I guess there's a bike coming. We should probably move out of the center of the trail." And they did.
Right. To be fair, I have been training for these moments my whole life. When I go to the grocery store, and ever since I was 6 years old, given this so important duty of controlling the grocery shopping cart, not blocking the grocery aisles and things like that. I really think I give myself a lot of courtesy, or give others a lot of courtesy to, if I hear someone coming, if I see someone coming, stand off to the side, choke up on the leash, that kind of thing. But that doesn't, there's still kind of a sense of my turf that you definitely get from some people. It's like, oh, you're not on a bike path. How dare you? How could you?
Well, aren't
I
all
mean,
bike,
I view these as recreational trails that are
Right.
good.
yeah, all the bike paths are not really bike paths. They're as you say, they're recreational trails. They're for foot, hiking, or for bicycles. I think that they should. I don't think they're just uniquely, strictly just for a
Well,
bicycle.
I don't want to paint.
And there are a
all
lot
the-
of places that where they're also for horses.
Well, yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
You know, we have a lot of trails up here in Connecticut that are not asphalt; they are hard packed dirt, and they're horse trails as well as you know, bike trails. And you know, that's a whole other issue, because if you're a horseback rider, as I used to be, you see somebody coming on a bike, you get a little nervous because you never know how a horse is going to behave. And my norm is, if I'm on my bike and I'm approaching and I see a horse approaching, I'll just pull off to the side and stop, because that will preclude, you know, any untoward incident taking place.
Well, I want to know, if you're riding a horse, do you have the same responsibilities as you do with if you're walking a dog? You have to carry a little bag around with you in case there's an accident.
No,
No.
not even a diaper. But you know, getting back to the point you guys were making in terms of biking infrastructure, one of the groups I met with at Interbike last year, and I'm going to be meeting with them again this year, is called People for Bikes, which is a bicycle advocacy group. And you know, they talk about the difference between biking infrastructure in Europe and in the United States. In Europe, almost every major city has lots of designated bike lanes, and even you know, you go up to Canada, getting around. I've not been in a lot of cities, but I've spent some time in Montreal, and it is a pleasure to get around Montreal on a bike, because all of the bike lanes are clearly delineated. The cars stay out of them, and you know,
Well,
you feel comfortable.
I think as we're getting to the bottom of this topic, then, are we saying that you see a bicycle trail, does that imply that you can ride an e-bike on a bicycle trail? And where do you differentiate an e-bike from a motorbike? I mean, who's making those decisions? I mean,
Well, the federal government's already made that decision.
Right.
A motorbike is one where you do not have to pedal. An
Okay.
e-bike, or an electric assist bike, under federal law, is one where you do have to pedal. It has operating pedals and will not go over 20 miles an hour on the flats,
Got it.
whereas a motorbike can go however fast it can go.
Okay, all right. So the rules have been laid down. There they are, and then you have to comply. And I guess the other flip side of the coin is that, are all bicycle trails then for e-bike trails, or only some?
Interestingly enough, no. And in fact, there are communities that have specifically said, we will not allow e-bikes on them. There are some communities in Canada. There are a couple of places in Colorado, I believe, where there's really an issue about allowing e-bikes on the trails. Now, again, Ben, to your point about federal and state, if a recreational trail was funded with federal dollars, there is a real compelling argument that could be made that therefore they need to abide by the federal regulations, which would allow e-bikes on those trails.
Right.
But talk about going out and fighting City Hall, you know.
Yeah, and again, you know, I think short of hitting someone with an e-bike, short of causing an accident with an e-bike, short of hitting someone over the head with an e-bike, I mean, I don't know many instances of people actually calling the cops and say, hey, I think there's an illegal e-bike. I clocked him going 21, and that's just too fast for an e-bike. Like, I think it's a victimless crime, if it's a crime at all.
Yeah, it's you know, to me, it's a matter of antiquated regulation in New York State, which is adjacent to where I live, and an area where I do a lot of riding on my illegal e-bike in New York State. It's been a matter of politics in the state legislature. There are bills that have been introduced every year for about 8 or 10 years now to legalize them. The guy who is the primary proponent of e-bike regulation is despised by a majority of the members of one of the houses in the state legislature. So they turn it down every year when it comes up. It's all politics.
Yeah, and I guess the point I was making there was like, go use your e-bike. Of course, use it within reason, but the odds of you getting a ticket for it are like, well, Ben committed manslaughter. Oh, and also he was using an illegal e-bike. Like, you have to do something pretty serious, and then you might get an extra little fine for using an e-bike. But it's cool that they definitely have a convention for e-bikes and and all these different talking points, because I'll be honest, I consider myself pretty up to date on politics. E-biking flew way under the radar. I mean, I had no idea.
Well, it's interesting too, because what we're now seeing, the e-bike revolution, as it were, which is revolution with a very, very small r here in the United States, is really less than a dozen years old here. But we're now starting to see a lot of differentiation amongst e-bike makers in terms of suitable markets, market segmentation. And one of the things that I'm most excited about is that a number of the major manufacturers within the last couple of years have come out with what are called low-step bikes without a middle bar. You could say they've all lowered the bar.
Oh.
I'm sorry. No, I'm not really sorry. But they've lowered the bar so that you can literally, with some of these, step less than a foot high and get into the saddle without having to hoist your leg over, which becomes a real impediment for somebody as they get into their 50s, 60s, 70s, and so on. And originally those designs were called women's bikes, so that a woman could wear a skirt, and now they're just they're also for old farts.
Okay. All right. Well, so obviously the e-bike business is picking up, and when you get back from that convention, maybe next month we can talk a little bit more about what it is that you saw.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some of the new technologies that are going on, gearless shifting, a lot of connectivity that will tell you what your bike's doing, will allow you to find it once it's stolen.
You think a lot of this? You think a lot of this is coming from the electronic vehicles, cars, all this tech? I mean, we're a lot of things you're talking about. You hear a lot about in electric vehicles.
Well, I think telematics, which is the field, is clearly making its way into e-bikes, and it was inevitable. But because remember, there's a good chance that if you're into an e-bike, you are going to be somewhat tech savvy. And therefore, you probably want some of the bells and whistles. You might want, like Garmin makes a rear-mounted radar, so that if you're out on a road and some car is approaching you rapidly from behind and you don't have a mirror, it will alert you on a front-mounted display that there's a car on your backside. There are. A lot of them have GPS and the like. So, I think that there's an awful lot of synergy between the people who like the whole notion of technology in a bicycle and the ones who are pushing for advanced telematics.
All right. Okay. So I think what we're going to do is kind of shift gears. Oh, there it is again.
Oh, that was a biking joke, huh?
And start heading into wireless routers. We were just doing a story the other day with about one that's just been introduced with Netgear, which we're going to be talking about. But as you say, wireless routers have been pretty much a huge pain, and
oh boy.
Yeah. So, what's going on with that?
Well, what's happened in the last few months, and it's really been very recent, is a technology that we've seen sort of kicking around in some wireless devices called mesh networks. and it's now being deployed out and out in new wireless Wi-Fi systems or Wi-Fi routers. And the first three of the companies that are doing it, that are sort of new players, Ubiquity is doing a product called Amplify. There's one called Eero, and there's another called Luma. But also the majors like the D-Links and Netgears of the world are starting to get into this as well. You know, the problem has been, you know, when this all started, you know, you would bring a signal into your house, and you know, it would go through your cable box or through a DSL connection, and you used it instead of running, you know, Cat5, you would use this wireless thing to get the signal to your one computer or your one laptop.
Right.
You know, so you might have two, maybe three devices in a house. Now, it is not at all uncommon for people to have 10, 15, 20 different devices.
Yeah.
And, you know, these things just didn't have the bandwidth to cover, and they also didn't have the range. You know, it was great for a dorm room or for a small apartment, but once you started getting into like a 3,000 square foot house, and to say that you would start losing it around the edges, that was a gross understatement. Then you couple that to the inconsistencies, some of which are blamed on the routers and some of which are rightfully blamed on your ISP. I mean, I don't know anybody who has cable provided internet who doesn't periodically want to just go bloody well shoot their cable provider.
Yeah. Okay.
And so now we've got these things. The other part of it was that to set them up, you need a goddamn PhD. You know, you would have to go deep into the workings of your computer, into the IP address, into the submask net, whatever, blah blah, to do the settings so that it was, you know dot 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 dot. You know, I'm going, well, who needs this? And part of this new generation of router is you no longer have to stick a disk into your computer, which is good because so few computers have disks in them anymore.
Absolutely.
To set it up, most of them are using smartphone apps. So you basically, you know, go in and you sign into a smartphone app and, you know, push a couple of buttons and you're set up. And I am I've set up two of them so far. I've set up the Eero and I've set up the Amplify, and literally within a matter of minutes they were up and going. Both the Eero and the Amplify come with 3 units, sort of a base unit, and then 2 units that they don't call extenders anymore. That word is passé. Don't call it extender. It's now a mesh connection point.
All right.
So because this is now a mesh network instead of a point-to-point. So you can add lots and lots of stuff to the network without knocking it down, without impeding the speed between devices. So I think that from the user perspective, these new devices, these new systems, have been an absolute godsend. They've made it so much easier to get wireless up and running and to get it throughout your house and to get really good coverage. There is a downside.
Yeah.
Isn't there always?
Yeah.
It's the cost. It's the cost. They're a lot more expensive than your standard, you know, single point router.
Well, do you think this is all? I know the answer to it. I mean, I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are on this. Do you think this is all due to the Internet of Things? Everything is.
Well, I think that the demand for multiple connections is due, in no small part, to the anticipation of IoT, but in terms of the actual deployment, no, I think it's really, if you look around the house now, even what I would call pre-IoT or pre-smart home or pre-connected home, it's not unusual for people to have a couple of tablets, to have a streaming device from like a Roku or Google, Chromecast, whatever, and all of these things are going to take bandwidth on a standard router, and that's less concerning when you have the mesh network. But it also builds for the future. It means that when you start, connecting to your lights, to your, your garage and all of that, I'm concerned. I think that IoT still has some inherent security issues, and that's a subject for another day. But I think clearly these new mesh networks are going to be far better suited to IoT than what we've had in the past.
Yeah, don't get our friend Charles Tyndall started. He'll
Well, no, being out at CES this year, I mean, if you talk to Philips, if you talk to, a couple others that I'm currently drawing a blank on, like the really big, tech companies out there, and especially the ones that are thinking about, or at least are, positioning themselves to be the technology provider for not just connected homes, but for connected cities and towns and roads and car systems and everything and everything like that. The mesh, like a mesh network, is probably going to be all over cities at some point. Looking 5-10 years down the road, where cars have to be continuously connected to the internet, where people have to be continuously connected to the internet. Mesh network is the only thing that really makes sense. And bringing it into the home.
Today.
Well, I don't know what and someone else may invent a network that is far reaching, good speed, and better connectivity. But for now, mesh network, it provides that stability. But bringing it into the home, you're still going to pay that premium because it is still, kind of a new concept. Not much to it.
I got nothing to add to that. Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. Is that it is more expensive. It is better.
Right.
It is palpably better. We've had since we put in our mesh network, we've had far fewer issues. I've got five people who live in our household, and we've had far fewer issues than we have before. And now, anytime something screws up, it's almost a guarantee that it's my cable provider, my ISP.
At least you know where to look now. But
yeah, and I don't need the paperclip anymore.
Exactly.
And if you guys don't know what the paperclip is, I'm sorry, you've missed a lot of time.
Yeah.
Shoving it into your eyeball as you try to dull the pain of dealing with a cable provider. I hear you.
Yeah. You mentioned the Eero, the Amplify, and Luma. Although we're seeing that, like from Philips, the bulbs themselves are acting in many ways.
Well, those aren't repeaters. Those are just, again, another device taking advantage of an internet connection, but not actually repeating the signal.
Well, but the new one that we talked about from Netgear.
That is an Orbi, and that is specifically, instead of having one router, you now have multiple routers throughout the home. It's essentially a mesh network, yeah.
And we're going to be inviting them. They've already indicated to me that they would love to be on the show in the next few weeks, and we'll certainly have them on the program. I've always been an admirer of the work that Netgear does. And
good company, good stuff.
Yeah, that makes them really easy to do. All right, so before we're almost at the top of the hour. Before we shift gears again, pun intended, did anything else you want to mention about the wireless routers and any kind of a summation maybe for our listeners?
I mean, I think that the bottom line for me here is that the additional expense of these three-piece systems with the main router and the two extenders that both Eero and Amplify are doing are quite worth it. especially if you need to cover a fair-sized house. We've had no problems getting to the garage where we have an apartment, or to the basement apartment, or to the upstairs bedroom, and I think it's really been worth the investment. So I recommend it despite the increased cost.
Well, I guess the increased cost is translating to ease of use, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I mean they're just a pleasure. Not that setting up anything is a pleasure, but in comparison to what you had to go through to set up some of the older, more traditional routers, this is really, bada bing, bada boom.
No
Bang, and it's done.
no PhD required.
No,
For this one. Okay. All right. Well, I think that now we're going to continue in the next hour. You're going to stay with us. Now I know it's been talked about, and we even talked a little bit about in the first hour. But self-driving cars.
Hot new stuff. Hot new stuff happening this very week.
This very week. So we're going to get into self-driving cars or autonomous vehicles, and we're going to be talking about that.
And of course, maybe if we have a little bit of time, we'll talk about the first in the world approved pizza delivery drone has been approved.
All right, I'm for that. I want pepperoni with extra cheese. We're going to take a quick break as we wait for our drone to arrive. This is Computer America.
Broadcasting live. It's the only national radio talk show on computers to air every weeknight. Computer America. Hosted by national columnist Craig Crossman. The first hour's behind us, but there's still more of tech news, tech talk, and your phone calls. We're being beamed nationwide at ComputerAmerica.com. You got computer problems? Bring them on. You're listening to Computer America. Computers run the world, and we run computers. Call us or send us an email to live@computeramerica.com.
Hello and welcome into Hour 2 of the nation's longest-running, nationally syndicated radio talk show about computers and technology. This is the Computer America Show, and I'm your host, Craig Crossman.
And I'm your co-host, Ben.
Yes, and we continue on with Gary Kaye, Tech50 Plus's founder and chief content officer. We are talking about Tech50 Plus basically is an online magazine, technology with a boomer perspective, and Gary offers very interesting insights into how people 50 and over are embracing and using technology. And, I guess the role of Tech50 Plus as time continues to move forward, that may change in a way, in some respects, because I think as the younger generation who's grown up with technology, we're still at a point where there are many of us who did not grow up with this technology. But I think in the next 10, 15, 20 years, we'll get to a point where everybody has kind of grown up with it and it will no longer be an issue. Do you think that's going to be happening?
Well, what's interesting is that when we started Tech50 Plus, it was with the perspective that we wanted to serve the needs of originally baby boomers, and then we expanded it to 50-plussers, who are in fact tech savvy. We had never pointed ourselves in the direction of the newbies, and we've been drawn into that. I don't know. I'd say by some industry interests, some public opinion, and so on, to address some of the needs of the newbies. But that's not really our audience. We're really, based on the assumption that it was folks like, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and the like, who are the baby boomers, or were the baby boomers, who helped develop these digital technologies, and that this generation is actually pretty tech savvy to begin with. Now, obviously, there are folks who are in their 60s and more who are in their 70s, 80s, and beyond, who didn't have that much exposure to technology during the course of their working careers, and who are learning about it now. And there are other places where they can turn, and we work with some of those places. people like OATS, Older American Technology Services, and Oasis.net, where they do, and to some extent AARP, where they go out and they do training programs and they do tutorials for folks to whom this is all pretty new. That was not our mission, and so from my perspective, my audience, the sort of tech savviness of my prime audience isn't really changing all that much. I'm just getting more of them.
Ah, all right. Well, so you've been Tech 50 Plus now. You've been doing it for how long now? And
Well, we started this about 4 years ago with a slightly different name called In the Boombox, aimed at baby boomers.
Right.
And we found that the name In the Boombox was getting about zero traction.
Right.
They're going, oh, great name. What do you do? And so, we had pocketed a couple of URLs along the way, and one of which was Tech 50 Plus. And I just said, okay, you know what, this isn't getting us anywhere. Let's see if people recognize Tech 50 Plus. And all of a sudden, it was a no-brainer. I was like, oh, Tech 50 Plus. I know exactly what you do.
Yeah, exactly. You think it might have changed to Tech 60 Plus or Tech 70 Plus or Tech 80?
No, absolutely not. No, because
wrong direction. Yeah.
Well, not only is it the wrong direction, but here's the demarcation comes not so much with being tech savvy, although obviously there's a big difference between the 50-plussers and the 70-plussers, but it's actually a matter of physicality and attitude. When you are 30 or 40, you probably have some pretty decent eyesight. Your manual dexterity is still pretty good. By the time you're in your 50s or 60s, your eyesight is starting to go, your hearing may be starting to go, your manual dexterity. And more than that, the older you get, I think the less patience you have for crap that doesn't work right. And that's a big part of our mission. Yeah, you laugh, but it's true.
Well,
I mean, when you're 25 or you're 30, you're willing to peek and to poke. You remember what it was like growing up with DOS, with motherboards, with add-in boards, and those little tiny switches, and playing around with those things until you got it to work right, or until you threw it out the window.
I don't think.
Who wants to do that anymore? Nobody wants to do that anymore.
I don't think Ben has ever seen a dip switch. So.
Is that unless it was walking down the street, right?
Right.
No, the dip switch, exactly. Little tiny switches in that little package that you'd have to put the switch 3 and 7 and 9 have to be on, well, 4 and 3.
Thank goodness I've never had to deal with that.
Well,
it was a world our children never knew.
Yeah, they had jumper plugs. You had to put little jumper things on the plugs. So. But thankfully, as you said, most of that stuff is gone, and most everything is software configurable, and that's the world that we find ourselves in.
But I mean, I encounter products every single day where either the manuals are so badly written that you can't understand them. They're not made.
Ben never read a manual, and is proud of it. So there, right.
And I mean, I would like to believe that all products should be made sufficiently intuitive that you never have to pick up a manual.
Yeah.
But it's not the case.
Well, I mean, of course, in all manuals, you basically just go online and you can download the manual. A lot of companies don't even.
Well, that's why. And that if you look at packaging now, that's exactly what's going on. More and more people simply put in a 2-page quick start guide and basically say, if you can't figure it out from here, go online and figure it out.
Download it. Yeah.
Of course, part of the problem is you can't get online. You're SOL.
I ran into that just this morning actually, and I don't know why Windows does this. They're like, I don't understand why they don't have a Word document somewhere built into the operating system, baked in there, that's saying that if you have this error code, send the user to this directory, because like every time it's like, oh, we see that you have problems connecting to the internet. Would you like to search the internet for solutions to your internet problems? It's like, it's Windows 10. How have you not figured this out yet?
Yeah. Do you wonder? Do you wonder about the people who are doing this stuff?
Yeah.
They're getting paid a lot of money, not to mention stock options.
Lucky them.
Yeah,
What a gig.
it is. Okay, so we're going to talk about what?
Self-driving cars.
Yeah, but not only self-driving, we're going to talk about milestones. For those, it was interesting because Ben came up with something yesterday, and I had never actually thought about it. I don't know. I don't think Ben and I thought of it either, but he certainly mentioned it, and I had never considered it. We were talking about, well, as battery and technology improves, they're going to have like 300 miles now before you have to go for another charge. And I said, wouldn't it be great if they could find a way to charge the batteries more quickly? And Ben said, no, they don't have to do that. He said, all you have to do is you have to pull into a station, and they'll have batteries there. You just take out your old battery, you give them your old battery, you take the new one that's fully charged, you put it in, and they take your battery and start charging again, and you're off, and you have an instant charge.
That was a concept that was developed by an Israeli company about 7-10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, what a great idea.
And it failed miserably.
Yeah, but what a great idea. I mean, why did
failed miserably? Just a total disaster.
Yeah, but now they have the superchargers and things, so I guess you keep your own battery. But Ben also points out that was the concept of the hydrogen fuel cell, that you would just drop off the fuel cell and then
that you pull into a station, drop off your fuel cell, and swap in a new one, and you'd be off and running. Just the idea of swappable power sources. I mean, any 10-year-old with a remote control toy knows that charge one battery, use one battery, and switch them out as you see fit. Like in a very simple, and yes, I consider my viewpoint simple. In a very simple viewpoint, it makes all the sense in the world to have a swappable power source for vehicles.
But why aren't
hey Ben, how about putting the power supply into the highway?
Well, that's more of an that's going to require more work. Here, you just basically, if every service station carries a supply of the, 10, 20, 30, 40 of them, how many, and people came in, they keep swapping them. But that's a lot more simple, but having than to manufacture an infrastructure. Why did that fail miserably? You would think that would be, would be the best way to go.
Because at that point, electric cars were a novelty, and there was not sufficient level of activity.
But given that, now that we know that they're no longer a novelty, and now that we know they're no longer and they are here to stay, and they're going to be, why don't they just start implementing that? As maybe they can put in supercharger stations, but while they're doing that, in the interim, as a stopgap, just make stations where you go in and you change your battery. It turns out that the Tesla, you can't swap the battery out easily. I mean, it's an integral part of the car, so you can't really do things like that.
Nope.
Maybe it's too late.
It's not even a matter of too late. I think in some ways it's a matter of being too early. So, for example, let's talk about fuel cells.
Mm-hmm.
Fuel cells is amazing technology. I mean, what does it take? It takes hydrogen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, basically, in theory, you could make every gas station or service station into a hydrogen generation facility. All they need to do is boil water.
Right.
And you can use sunlight to generate the power to boil water.
Yeah.
So you could basically have these almost near zero cost filling stations where you come in and you refill your hydrogen fuel cell with hydrogen that's made on the spot by having solar panels, generating electricity to boil water and separate out the oxygen and the hydrogen, bottle the hydrogen, put it in your car.
Okay. What happened?
It may yet happen, but it hasn't happened yet.
Huh.
Yeah, we hear about these things all the time where, they're very promising, but one step in the development somewhere, I mean, it just never makes it to market, sadly.
Now, why is that?
A million different reasons.
There's really one answer to that.
What's the answer?
Because the guy before had a vested interest in not changing it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'm sure that's definitely one of them, but there's also
No, I mean, look at what happened with you know with the electric trolleys that used to cross the San Francisco Bay Bridge. Do you know what happened?
my San Francisco trolley history knowledge is
Well,
severely
it's
lacking.
not only San Francisco; it was also Los Angeles and elsewhere. General Motors bought up all of those municipal railway systems, ripped out the trolleys, and put in gasoline-powered buses made by General Motors.
Well, there it is.
And there have been, tons of instances where big auto companies, in particular, have bought out engine designs that would dramatically improve gas mileage and put them out of business to keep them off the market.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what ExxonMobil and those guys have at stake in terms of the existing infrastructure. And they're all going, oh yeah, we're doing work in solar and renewable and whatnot. Yeah, but 127% of their profits are coming from oil, guys. Let's get real.
How many times have we seen people on the news? I mean, legitimate news services. This guy invents this, new power source, from water, and he's lighting a torch from the water, and here it is the final thing. Or we hear about batteries that last 2, 3, 4 times as long as the existing batteries, and it's amazing, and it's hitting Main Street news, and you see it, and then you never hear from them again.
Right.
Yeah.
Because either they didn't have the money to develop it, or somebody bought them out and killed it off. One of the rare exceptions to this entire process has been Elon Musk, and you may think he's a lunatic, but boy, is he changing things. He's changing, power models for not only our cars but our homes. And the acquisition of his cousin's company, I mean, it's his company too, Solar Cities is just another example of that. And he's one of the few guys out there who's really had the guts to basically say, I know how to make the change and I'm going to pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. A couple $1 billion from PayPal doesn't hurt to back you up there. It definitely takes a lot of believing in yourself that you can take on an industry that is, I think, seen by many as not really changeable. One person can't really change it. But I guess if Tesla has shown anything, it's that people want electric cars. They just wanted good electric cars, and he's made a business out of it. It's good.
And they're doing the same thing. I mean, Lyndon Reeve, who's Elon's cousin, who runs Solar Cities, which basically Elon helped to fund, has basically proven the model for putting solar panels on homes at little cost to the homeowner. I think that these big battery packs that Tesla and Solar Cities are developing could be a real game changer in terms of the ability to store power and allow people to get off the grid. One of the problems with solar, and this really gets off on a tangent that's going to get us way away from self-driving cars, but one of the problems with solar power, and I used to run a website called Zero Energy News back in the days before the housing market collapsed, is that in order to use solar power, the electric companies really wanted to take you for a ride in terms of the low rate at which you would buy back power in comparison to the high rate at which you would have to purchase power from them. So it was a losing game. At night it would get dark, and unless you had piles and piles of these big lead acid batteries, you couldn't store enough to get you through the night, much less get you through days or weeks, or go off grid. And Tesla and Solar Cities are really changing that with the new power wall that they're developing. That will make off-grid power living a lot more feasible, and ultimately I think could put a real dent in the electrical infrastructure, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean the Powerwall we've covered it when Elon Musk first brought it out, and they've discontinued actually I think the larger version, and now it's just the smaller the smaller capacity battery. But I mean the way that I think Elon has kind of positioned a lot of his products, you see very clearly how they all fit together. The car is charged off the whole home battery, and the whole home is used to power not just the car but also everything else. And then Elon Musk just had his new grand idea. I'm not sure if he debuted it the other day or not. We didn't talk about it on the air, but Elon Musk is introducing shingles. Cheap, disposable, reusable, what have you, shingles that that are actually solar cells on each shingle. So
yeah,
the
that's not the
entire
first. That's not the first time that it has been done. But
It's not.
but there have been some real issues with using solar in shingles. The biggest issue, and I haven't seen what Elon is working on, but the biggest issue in the early days of that technology was the wiring. You needed really fine wiring, and the wiring was the weak point as the connection between or amongst the shingles.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
they've
And again,
improved.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They've improved the wiring technology. I mean, they went
Definitely.
down to the nano wires. I mean, they're getting down to the
Right.
wiring.
Sometimes technology is definitely done before, but it just needs to wait to a time to where it's matured.
Mhm.
Yeah, just ask the guys at the Palm Pilot.
No one wants to touch their phones. They have greasy sausage fingers. They don't want to touch their phones.
So, what milestones are we talking about here for the?
Well, we had 3 different things all happen this week, which is pretty amazing. The first was the announcement by Ford Motors that by 2001 it intends to have a fleet of self-driving cars on the road.
Yes.
And this is the first major commitment by an American automaker. Some people are saying that Ford really stuck it to Google by doing this. And the Ford proposal, and we'll see if this still is going to hold. But the Ford proposal is for a fleet of cars that has no steering wheel, no gas pedal, no brake pedal, and is basically autonomous. But you wouldn't own it. It would be a fleet ownership, and you would call for one when you needed it, and it would come and pick you up and take you from point A to point B. And it would operate, and at least initially, in very, very defined areas that were mapped out sort of block by block to handle the technology.
Right, and this was a use case of self-driving cars that we had talked about, but I think, at least in my mind, I never put it before people had an opportunity to buy their own self-driving cars. We thought, because personally I thought that the private car ownership model was just so ingrained in the American people that it was going to be secondhand. But to hear Ford, maybe they really do think that the next step for car manufacturers isn't to sell to consumers, but to command and build and run these giant fleets instead.
Well, we've discussed this before, Ben, but when you look at the number of hours in the course of a day or a week that your car is not in use,
Right.
It doesn't make a lot of sense for a lot of people to own cars. If you live in an urban or even suburban area, and 90% of your car driving is definable as point A to point B, and the rest of the time the car isn't in use, well, then why own a car? Many years ago, when I lived in Manhattan, and I had a car stolen, I turned around and instead of replacing it, I said, you know what? During the week, I don't leave Manhattan at all. I mean, I just take the subways or the buses.
Mhm.
The only time that I really want to get away is on the weekends, and so I'll go rent a car for the weekend and save myself all of that ownership grief, and especially not having to park it on the street where it's going to get stolen again. And in that particular instance, it made perfect sense. And this is really, an extension of that, and the recognition that an awful lot of people don't need their cars many, many hours of the day, and there are more practical solutions that would allow people to really, get the benefit from, creating and owning that vehicle, and have it in use 14 hours a day instead of 2 hours a day.
Yeah, the last day that we talked about here on the show was, 90% of the time, people aren't using their cars. So, but I guess the next question is, if Ford does this, and of course Ford's only going to do it, let's face it, when it tries something new, it's only going to try it in, let's say downtown Austin, Texas. It's going to try it in, Manhattan.
Pittsburgh. Everything's coming to Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, like it's only going to be in major metropolitan areas. But how far is it going to go before other car manufacturers start saying maybe people don't want to own cars or maintain cars or really work on cars? Maybe people just want to use cars. So I don't know.
That also gets into some of the other things that we've kicked around before, which is the liability issue.
That's true.
As you get into self-driving cars. Anyway, the second milestone,
right,
was the announcement that Uber in Pittsburgh is going to introduce a fleet of basically self-driving Volvo XC90s that will be put into service, and for the first time, and this is going to happen within the next few weeks, start picking up passengers. Now, unlike Ford, this will have a steering wheel, and what's more is it will have a warm body behind the steering wheel who can intervene if it's necessary, and it's going to have still one other person, so I hope you're not traveling with a crowd. It's still going to have another person sitting in the car to evaluate the passenger experience.
Yeah.
That's weird.
So, I think this is really a very interesting first step. And the last milestone, I think I just sort of caught the item, I believe it's Singapore, is getting a fleet of self-driving taxis.
Now, are they going to be autonomous too, or are they going to be somebody sitting behind the wheel?
You know what? I didn't delve that far in, so I admit that I am remiss here.
Have you ever had a thought about when they come out with these?
I got to tell you, having spent most of my life in and around New York, I'd rather have the cab with no taxi driver in it.
Well, yeah, but that was my first thing. I mean, what
what bad experience with cabbies did you have?
Not great.
Well, here you are, an erudite, sophisticated, New Yorker, and you hail a cab, and it comes over, and the first thing you see in there is no one. Are you going to just step right in, or are you going to be taken aback and say, "I'm not getting into that thing. There's nobody driving it." I mean, what kind of?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be the scenario, Craig. I think it's going to be a lot more like the Lyft or the Uber scenario, where you get on your smartphone and
you order one.
You tap in and you order one, and it'll tell you what the license tag number is going to be or the side tag number is going to be, and it pulls up to your location. You get in. So you're not going to be surprised unless you get into the wrong one.
Well, let's take that scenario. Let's say you use your smartphone, you order at Uber, and it comes up, and you're expecting an Uber to arrive, but some guy's going to be in there, and then you get there, and the car pulls up, and everything, you recognize it, and there's still nobody driving it.
They're not going to shock you with it, Craig. They're going to tell you very upfront that you are ordering a self-driving Uber.
And people may.
And the chances are the guy's not going to take you from Manhattan to the Bronx via Staten Island.
Yeah, but the people, I know how people are. A lot of people just don't read things. I mean, you don't read manuals, Ben. People just don't read what it says.
It's not about reading when you say, "Hey, Ben, would you like to sign up for Uber self-driving service?" Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, sure. I love it. Like, you can bet they're going to market the crap out of that.
Okay, so you're saying everybody's going to be aware when that car.
Absolutely.
They're going to expect.
It is going to be a huge cultural change, and Some people will accept it and some people won't, but it's going to happen.
Okay. So the people that won't accept it, are those the older generation, or do you think that has nothing to do with age? That just has to do with trust. You know?
Well, I think there's going to be a little bit of both. I think that where I envision self-driving cars and the 50 plus or 60 plus or 80 plus generation is the folks who are going to lose their licenses, who are basically going to be told you're no longer qualified to drive, and so you either better have a son or daughter or live in who's going to get you everywhere, or you're going to accept the notion of a self-driving car that's going to get you from point A to point B, because you're not going to be able to drive yourself.
Of course,
but
if you live in the city, that's a non-issue, though, because everybody has cabs and buses, and there's plenty of transportation, subways. You don't really need it. It's in the more rural areas where you don't have all those public transportation facilities where you're going to really need something like this.
Right, and that covers a lot of territory. But I think that so I think there is going to be an age issue. I think that there are a lot of folks who do not like the idea of a self-driving car. They still think that their judgment behind the wheel or a human judgment behind the wheel is going to be better than a machine's judgment.
All right. Well, listen, we're at the bottom. All right, we're at the bottom of the hour. We're going to continue on. This is an interesting subject and far from over. Gary Kaye continues on with us in the last half hour. Tech50 Plus's founder and chief content officer. We have a news tips bulletin review from Marty Winston coming up as well. You're listening to Computer America. We'll be right back. Hi, this is Craig Crossman, host of the Computer America Show. You have important meetings to schedule. Your company's getting ready for its IPO, and you're in charge of the PTA fundraiser this month. So how do you coordinate everyone to be available at the same time? Are you still using emails, phone calls, even text messages to schedule meetings with a group of people? How's that working out for you? Not so great, huh? It's a fact that every day, millions of people suffer from scheduling headaches. Well, with Doodle, scheduling meetings with a group of people is quick and easy. With Doodle, you can easily propose available times to each member. Each one checks off the times that they are available, and then you simply pick the time that works best for the group, all in an easy-to-read display that integrates with your existing calendar. Nothing could be more simple. Give Doodle a try for free, and like millions of Doodle users, you'll truly see how easy it is to find the perfect date and time for all your meetings. That's www.doodle.com. Looking for a best friend? Brother Wolf Animal Rescue has your best friend waiting just for you. The mission of Brother Wolf Animal Rescue is to help build a sustainable, no-kill community where no dogs or cats are ever killed for population control, where true euthanasia is reserved only for animals who are irremediably suffering, or for animals who are truly a threat to society and with no hope of rehabilitation. Brother Wolf's staff and volunteers go door to door, neighborhood by neighborhood, to educate citizens about local resources available for at-risk pets and to help their families connect with those resources. Brother Wolf's community-based approach to no-kill helps keep family pets healthy, happy, and in their homes and out of the local shelter system in the first place. For more information or to make a tax-deductible donation to this wonderful 501c3 organization, visit their website at www.bwar.org. Help to realize Brother Wolf's vision when no animal is euthanized for lack of a home.
Who's a good boy?
Oh, my. He thinks he's superior to those other narcissists. Marty Winston with a News Tips Bulletin Review for Computer America. This time, the Kaye Control NG100 Firewall. We love hardware firewalls for their full-time protection. And the new Kaye Control, K-E-R-I-O, the Kaye Control NG100 Desktop Firewall is a surprising amount of power, like with an Intel dual-core CPU, plus versatility, all in a package as small as a stack of 3 CD cases. It can split an incoming WAN connection into 2 separate networks at LAN 1 and LAN 2, and a USB port lets you store and recover your configurations. So bottom line, when you need hardware-level protection plus versatility, A Kaye Control NG100 desktop firewall is an inspired choice. Marty Winston, News Tips Bulletin for Computer America.
And welcome back to, let's face it, the last segment here on today's show. The show's gone by oh so quickly. Who knew? But yeah, no, Gary Kaye is finishing out the show here with us as, he is from Tech50 Plus, and yeah, we are, just getting into, let's face it, the milestones of the self-driving cars, and, one point I wanted to make about the second milestone was the fact that, the idea of a person behind the wheel, I mean, legislatively, that's kind of what it has to be right now. Until people get comfortable with the idea, until it's proven that it's safe. Honestly, I consider anything a fraction of what the current accident rates are in America, I would consider that a success. So, hopefully we get to the point where we don't need a person behind the wheel, but so far every state, at least, that has passed self-driving car regulations for testing, for taxis, for what have you, so far they've all included a person must be behind the wheel to take control in case of a malfunction. So that's going to be the rule for years to come, I think. I mean, and that's what it is for Tesla. They have the autopilot system, but you have to, according to Tesla, be ready to take control of your car at any moment. It's not really going to be a question of will people trust self-driving cars. It's people are going to trust people for the foreseeable future.
Well, they say you have to have your hand on the wheel at all times.
Right.
Well, I think that what we're going to be seeing, and unfortunately I'm not going to live to see it, but I think we're going to see a rollout over 1 to 2 generations as we move from autonomous vehicles that are equipped with their own onboard systems to vehicles that rely on communications with other vehicles, that rely on communications with an infrastructure. We talked a few weeks ago about the possibility that it may one day be illegal for you to drive yourself on a highway, right, because the highway will be entirely regulated. But this is going to be a long, slow adoption period. And you've got to change. Not only do you have to change the mentality of people, but you have to change the physical hardware. You've got to change, put in essentially new suites of electronics, and you have to foolproof them every step of the way. And then you also have the regulatory issues that we've been discussing, and those are not a small matter.
What do you think? Have you ever thought of what people 50 or 100 years from now will look back at this time and what do you think they'll kind of smile and smirk at all this people that didn't know, or I mean, what do you think the history? How do you think the history books are going to treat this time?
I mean, I don't think I got to tell you. I look at this and I sort of got to laugh. I mean, when I was a kid, my grandparents used to spend lived in Brooklyn and spent their winters in Florida. How did they get there? They got there by train. Every year there would be an entourage of the family. They would go to Penn Station and see the grandparents off with all of their trunks and their luggage as they packed off to Florida. Nobody does that anymore. You get on an airplane, 2.5 hours later, you're in Florida. We take that for granted. It was a sea change in transportation. I think no more of getting on an airplane to go to Europe or to go to Asia than my dad did about going to New Jersey. Yeah. And I think that's what's going to happen, Craig. I think that it's going to be a normal, a natural evolution. People will go back and they'll look at it the way that we look at cranked up automobiles today, or the way we look at DOS.
Really?
Remember that?
What was that? Okay. Okay.
We here at Computer America do not condone animal abuse in any form.
That was the dog. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what that was. She's okay though. Sorry about that. But no.
Did you
Lance,
step on her tail again?
no, I rolled over it, but that's something different. No, but no, but the one thing I want to say is that you said 100 years ago, looking to now, and 100 years from now, looking at 100 years in the future. I mean, let's face it, people 100 years ago didn't know anything about computers. Computers weren't even a thought, and now look at how much computers have changed everyone's lives. That and ever since computers, the advancement of technology has been exponential, not just linear.
Yeah.
So in 100 years in the future, they're not just going to look back and say, oh, look how cheesy the Apple II was. No, they're going to be like, how did these people not kill themselves by cooking with fire in their homes daily? Like, it's going to be that level of thing. It's we look back 40 years ago and say, wow, they were painting baby cribs in lead-based paint. How are all the babies not dead? I mean,
hey Ben, for all I know, 100 years from now, they will finally master teleportation through quantum physics, and you want to go from point A to point B, you'll step into your closet, you'll push a button, and you'll land up 5,000 miles away.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the technologies that they'll have in 100 years will, yes, we remember the trebuchet fondly. We still pumpkins on occasion.
But now we're going to catapult into the future.
But right, but now we have Hellfire missiles that will take out entire villages. I mean, advancements in every field are unimaginable. 100 years in the future to everyone.
Mm.
So one of the places, this is going to be an interesting segue, guys, so hang in here with me. One of the things that's interesting is the changes in medical technology that we're looking at in the course of the next 100 years. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was something that Philips is doing and introduced earlier this month. But Philips, which is really well known in Europe and not so much in the U.S. I mean, we all know about Norelco shavers and Sonicare toothbrushes, and the Philips Hue light bulbs have made some inroads. But Philips is making a multi-million-dollar bet in the field of connected healthcare here in the United States, and they're doing it in a way that I've not seen any other company moving into the space, and that is they are doing not quite cradle to grave, but pretty close. So we've seen companies that have been doing single items like or suites of items like cardio, which has had a connected scale and a blood pressure cuff, and we've had eye health, which has had the blood pressure monitors and scales and so on. But what Philips is doing is they're starting off with a connected watch. That'll be like a fitness tracker, but it's also going to be, that and your smartphone will be the hub of a wellness system. And then on the older side, they've got this company called Respironics that does like sleep apnea machines. It's got, life alert sensing, built-in sensors in the house to monitor the medication administration and so on. And they're really making a stab at this whole notion of connected healthcare from the day that we're old enough to learn about fitness until they bury us. And I think that's a very interesting effort on their part. And one of the things that they're doing is they're doing coaching. They're doing prompting. They've brought in a team of psychologists to basically say, you know what, you're not going to lose 55 pounds in the next month, but let's talk about what you can do, and let's try and encourage you to take little steps towards wellness.
I mean, you said the phrase cradle to grave, and some of the stuff I saw out at CES this year, that is exactly what they're going for. I mean, I think it might have been Philips or one of the other medical companies out there. I mean, they had a whole line of products. The first one was a baby monitor, a connected baby monitor. The next one was like a picture frame monitor kind of thing for young kids. That would display information. And then, of course, wearables into whole home stuff for the elderly. I mean, the idea that you're going to be surrounded by technology from the day you're born to the day you die, that's an idea I think people are going to have to get comfortable with. That's definitely where at least companies are putting their research money to.
So let me paint the dark side of this for the moment.
Dun, dun, dun.
Right. If we know that, for example, there's an obesity problem in the United States, there's a diabetes epidemic in the United States, actually worldwide, and we know some of the behaviors that can be changed to prevent this. We know that getting more exercise can help prevent it. We know that proper nutrition can help prevent it. Now we've got the technology to monitor what you're doing and to prompt you on an ongoing basis to do that. Do we then, as a society, take the next step and basically say, listen, when you were 25 years old, we were monitoring your health and we told you you needed to stop eating red meat. We told you you had to stop eating candy bars, and you didn't do it, and now you're a diabetic and you want our health care to pay for you when we told you what you shouldn't be doing. Do we now have the right to turn around and say, okay guys, you didn't listen to us, so we're not going to cover you?
And again, I think the last time we raised this question, I was on the side of, I hope by the time that comes around, we are efficient enough as a society that we can support everyone with universal health care. I hope so. I hope so.
Or just find the cure for the thing. If you just find
but you cannot find a cure for self-destruction, Craig.
No.
Just look at all the millions of people who are still smoking cigarettes, and the vast majority of them are going to get ill or die and incur huge healthcare costs on their way out.
Yeah.
And how long have we been saying cigarettes are going to kill you?
Yeah.
Years and years. It's not a new it's not a new thing that cigarettes cause certain forms of cancer and things like that. I mean, that's a given, and yet people still go out there and do it. And in our current system, we say, hey, freedom of choice, go for it. It's your body. It's a perfectly legal product. Go for it.
Right. And so now I'm saying, now that we have the diagnostics, now that we have the quantified self, now that we have the monitoring, and the insurance companies are getting involved in this, and the healthcare providers are getting involved in this, do we then risk, or do we then embrace the notion that not only can we be changing our behavior, but that there will be consequences in the society if we don't change our behavior?
There's also that question of, if people are given the information, that, without a change in habit, without a change in diet, without a change in exercise, you will develop this disease. This is, like, we've scanned your genetics, we know that you're going to get this. Here are some very easy to follow steps and exactly what you need to do. Here's exactly a menu that you can eat. Given enough resources, how many resources, how many times do you have to be told to change your habits before you say, well, there's no saving this person, they want to be overweight, and then you can go after them. But it's not like we're going to spring it on. It's like, oh, you did eat a cookie, and I know we didn't tell you that the cookie was bad at age 13, but we're going to drop you now. No, I think there's going to be years and years and years of medical advice and medical knowledge that that can be applied through these systems. People are going to know what they're doing to themselves, just like they know what they're doing with cigarettes. And hey, if that's their conscious choice, that's theirs. But I think given enough information, I think almost anyone would change their habits.
No, but the fact is they don't.
like
They don't. So I guess my response is, again, at what point do we as a society turn around and say, we told you so, and you blew it. Now you want us to pick up the cost for it. And again, talking about universal health care, that would be, it would be us. It would be we, the taxpayer, who would be paying for bad behavior. Should we as a society basically say, we're willing to give you all freedom of choice, or are we willing to say, no, because we're paying for your health care, you have to do the things that we're telling you to do? And talk about the specter of Big Brother hanging over you. It's really scary, and I don't really have any answers for this, but I think that people need to consider the question, and they need to consider the implications of having this kind of early wellness intervention and what it might mean later on.
People are not prone to have a positive reaction to intervention. People don't like other people messing in with their lives, like the government or whomever. I know I wouldn't like someone saying, "Hey, you can't do that anymore." Yeah, according to who? All right, you can't do it. Well, okay. I may just continue to do it just to be spiteful. I'm not going to tell
That's
you.
healthy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, listen. This summer I lost my brother-in-law, who was a very, very heavy smoker, and he was told for years, unless you stop smoking, horrible things are going to happen to you, and he had very little insurance. The only insurance he had was Medicare, and in his final months, he ran up, tens of thousands of dollars in bills that we as taxpayers are going to have to pay for because of his bad behavior. Should there have been a point at which one said, if you continue this bad behavior, you're going to have to bear the consequences of it yourself, and we as a society aren't responsible.
Well, we've learned the fact you can't legislate
Morality.
and I mean
Behavior. You can't legislate behavior.
Can't legislate behavior. You can't.
Within some bounds.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do it, to prevent people from hurting other people.
Yeah.
But what about hurting yourself?
Right. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. If that's ever going to be successful. I think just the pattern of human nature is to resist that. I'm not sure under what label, but I think that's it. I mean, they when with the prohibition and alcohol, they tried to legislate that, never worked. That's why they eventually lifted it. I mean, we see examples.
I think that's also a lesson that people really like their booze. Like, I don't know if that taught us, the government knows what's better for you.
It didn't. I mean, and whether they're not, they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, because drinking has always been a socially acceptable thing. It's been in the Bible, for crying out loud. I mean, they haven't had methamphetamines in the Bible. I mean, they haven't been around that long. But I'm saying,
they had poppy.
Drugs, you can do that. But things that have been around since like the beginning of time, it's hard to. I mean, tobacco's been around since the beginning of time. And I mean, it's hard to. You can stop new things, but you can't stop. It's very difficult to stop old things that people have been doing for thousands of years.
Well, I mean, interestingly enough, is the number of people smoking cigarettes has dropped dramatically in the last couple of decades, and in part legislation has made it impossible to smoke in a lot of places. You just can't go light up wherever you want to anymore.
Well, if you're a young kid and and you're about ready to start smoking, and first of all you take and it's choking and everything, I don't think the social pressures that used to be are not as much as extreme anymore. I think it's come into the consciousness of awareness of why start something that is just going to kill you in the end. I mean, it's expensive. You can't smoke where you used to. I mean, thinking it's so unacceptable.
Thinking back to my high school experience, which again is getting further and further every year now, sadly. But no, again, graduated class of 2009, and thinking back, there were a few smokers, but they hung out with other smokers. Like, that was their social group. It was socially acceptable in their little social group. very rarely would you have a single smoker in a group of non-smokers. In my group of friends, no smokers, and in a lot of different circles, no smokers. Like it was just where smoking was accepted, you found other people that accepted smoking, and that's kind of who you hung out with.
Well, I mean, the socialization process has changed dramatically, Ben. I mean, when I was a kid, the vast majority of folks I knew in high school were smokers. And by the time they reached their 30s and 40s, most of them had figured out that this is really dumb and stopped.
Right.
And I think we're seeing less and less. I mean, if you go into high schools today, I mean, are they? I think you're finding less of it.
Oh yeah, very very rare. And actually, talking about legislating, but there was that law that just recently passed in California and I think New York, saying that the legal smoking age is now 21. So, even harder to be a high schooler who smokes.
Yeah, I mean, my belief is if you tax the hell out of it and make it economically prohibitive for the vast majority of people to do it.
Now we have other issues, of course. Now we're talking about the legalization of marijuana, but that's smoking. But you don't have to smoke it necessarily. You can
eat it.
You can eat it. There was a tincture. I mean, you can put it on your skin. I mean, there's so many different ways of that's a little bit more socially acceptable.
Nothing like a good batch of brownies.
Yeah, exactly. To get that high. Listen, we have about 3 or 4 more minutes. I'm just looking at some of the stories on the Tech50 Plus website. I know you're talking about back to college. You're talking about some of the you've done a lot of reviews on some of the Asus Vivio Stick PC, Windows 10 on your television. There's a whole bunch of them. And a lot of the articles that you've done too. Why Lenovo is doubling down on the Yoga form factor, which is kind of cool. High-res audio, why aren't you listening? Okay.
High-res audio is really an interesting story. Next time around, we can spend a little time talking about high-res audio and why it's not taking off. Because the industry has been putting a lot of, especially Sony, and now Sony is teaming up with Best Buy and their Magnolia Studios to push high-res. And they've been at this for several years now, and they're still not getting a whole lot of traction. And I think that's a worthy discussion.
Sure, exactly. I also noticed that Marty Winston, who does our news tapes bulletin here on Computer America, he's doing a series called The Smarty House on Tech50 Plus. What is that about?
It's the Marty Smarty House. Marty's building this house. It's still in the design phases. That's going to incorporate all of these amazing technologies. And I'll laugh my ass off if he plugs it in. It doesn't work. But it's all of these sensors that do everything from tell you who's coming up the driveway to whether there's somebody in the room. And he's getting pretty deep into the weeds with some of this stuff. But he's really sort of pushing the envelope about what can be incorporated into a house without being Bill Gates. And I think that it's an exciting process to watch Marty as he chronicles the possibilities for the connected home, because I think that for the vast majority of us who are not going to retrofit our homes, this is almost science fiction. But for the guys who are going to build a house in the course of the next 1, 5, 10, 20 years, a lot of this stuff is going to become realistic. And I think Marty's willing to be at the bleeding edge. God bless him.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead and ask Craig. Being at the bleeding edge of home automation, what seems feasible and really cool right now is going to be a $3 doodad in 10 years. I mean, it's like controlling light switches. What used to take wiring and man hours and crazy amounts of time is now Bluetooth. Right. So I hope Marty Winston does it well, but do not be surprised at bleeding edge. It hurts sometimes.
I mean, the problem is that whatever you do, you're going to be obsoleted in about 37 seconds.
Sure. I mean, as I'm speaking personally, I mean, we put on a Crestron system for our home. I spent a fortune on that, and the things that and in many ways, it's just not necessary anymore. You can do things for a fraction of the cost. But you know, sometimes
It's like the days when people used to wire up their whole homes with whole home sound systems, and now it's like, hey, Wi-Fi speakers, just put 'em-
Right. Hey, listen, like that, a decade ago, my last house, we wired the entire thing. We retrofitted it with Cat 5 Ethernet, and who in their right minds would do that today?
Yeah, exactly. You can do it. You can play music through your light bulbs. Literally, you can do it.
Literally, I've got those in my bathroom.
Exactly. I mean,
No commentary needed.
exactly. Hey, Gary, listen, we're out of time. Listen, it's always a pleasure having you here on the program. And again, I'm looking forward to your the segments called Gary Kaye, the Senior Moments. We're going to start featuring those on the show, hopefully starting next week. And of course,
90 seconds.
you can head over to the website tech50plus.com, or you can head over to computeramerica.com. We have a link to the tech50plus.com website right there. Gary, we'll catch you next month, and we'll talk about the Interbike, and we'll talk about
Interbike. This is a fun couple of hours. I enjoyed it. I hope the audience did as well.
Sure they did. Absolutely. All right, stay with us to the end, as always. Coming up on tomorrow, we're going to be talking to Next Advisor. They're going to be sending us a specialist. First, they're going to do cyberbullying, but we have decided to do that another time. They're going to be doing cybersecurity from an interesting point of view. And then in the second hour, we'll do computer and technology news brought to you by Slimware Utilities. Also, don't forget, we're going to give away that Logitech M535 Bluetooth wireless mouse. So make sure that you got your entry in. It's all happening at computeramerica.com. Okay, that about wraps it up. Thank you so much for listening to the show, and Ben and I are going to see you here, same time, same place. So until tomorrow afternoon, this is Craig Crossman, hoping that your hard disk never becomes floppy. We'll see you tomorrow.
Have a good one, everyone.
10 seconds. Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Okay, again, everybody, thank you for watching the live video. And, hey, Gary, thanks again for being here with us.
Always my pleasure.
Yeah, and we look forward to getting those senior moments starting next week. Terrific.
I'll try to remember.
Okay. All right, everybody, bye-bye.
Thanks again. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.